break through the noise. Stop conforming to the rules of B2B.
The advertising through that, it's self-expression, like he's a perfect example.
Demand gen marketers, you have to act like a brand marketer as well for this to work.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Killens.
Let's see what's trending.
Welcome to GTM News Desk. My name is Mark Killens. Let's dive into the lead story of today. Google just recently announced a ton of information and published research on ads. What a surprise, Nick. Google loves ads. That's how they make their trillions of dollars. So when I saw this, I was a bit skeptical. It's like, what are they going to say that's really that interesting? Well, the link is in the show notes. Go check it out. We took away the top 3 things for you right now that you can pretty much do today. And the other thing is, as you listen to these, our special guest in the third story of today is going to go a bit deeper into what Google found. So number 1 takeaway, Nick. Today's advertising celebrates self-expression. I got to give a shout out to one of your friends, Tim Davidson. There's others on LinkedIn, but Tim Davidson for some reason comes up in my feed a lot. Thanks a lot, Tim. And he's always expressing himself with fruit. He's the fruit king. He loves fruit, and he ties that into everything he does. Talk about self-expression, Nick. It just makes me hungry thinking about it.
100%. Well, and I've hung out with Tim a decent amount. And I mean, not only is he a great self-expression when it comes to fruit, but he also does really great self-expression at conferences with a sign that he hand writes, holds up. And his whole thing is, think about that. Like, think about how many people leverage taking pictures of him, posting on social. I mean, any big conference that's out there, all I do is I see this guy on my feed. It just scrolls through. It's Tim cutting fruit. It's Tim holding up a sign. I mean, think about it. He's now known as like the fruit and sign guy, but it's something that has got him lots of, I think like good press in a certain degree. He's gotten brand deals from it. He's gotten lots of great opportunities. He's doing his own thing. So yeah, I mean, I think, the advertising through that, it's self-expression, like he's a perfect example. And I am seeing more people pop up that aren't cutting fruit, but they have a unique angle and they're standing for something. I think that's another thing. When self-expression, you have to stand for something at the end of the day.
Yeah, I stand for good ties. So yes, ties is how I stand out. Number 2 takeaway, brand stories increasingly depict community. I love this one because it's about telling the story of the brand with other people, not at or for other people. So as you think about your ads, you talked about a real person like Tim, you got to get real people to be the story of your brand. Forget the brand saying, hey, look how good I am. No, that's terrible. That is garbage these days. So much of that shit is coming at us. No, have someone who genuinely loves the brand, loves the product, is a part of the community, and get them to activate your ad and activate the audience engagement. And you'll see such better responses, and you'll see real people commenting and liking that. And you're going to see a lower cost of customer acquisition if you do something like that versus just your generic company first, blah, blah ad. And then the third takeaway, successful ads have a strong hook, which isn't like that new. We knew that. They're now leaning into pop culture, references, trends, catchy music. I don't know any of that shit. I don't even listen to music really. That's a fact. Probably should, but I don't. And they use some humor. So when you think about B2B ads, how many ads have those things outside of a hook? Very few. So break through the noise. Stop conforming to the rules of B2B. Our guest talks more about this later in the episode today. Do not conform, Nick. Stand out, stand for something, have some goddamn fun.
I think it's why UGC, which is user-generated content, that's starting to pop up. And I think people are using UGC or brands are tapping into UGC creators to leverage for ads. I mean, I'm seeing it more and more, and I'm actually seeing it more and more in the B2B side as well, outside of LinkedIn, of course, but I'm seeing it on, Instagram, I'm seeing it on TikTok, seeing it a little bit on YouTube. So I think in, the rest of 2024 and into 2025, successful ads are going to leverage UGC creators who already have audiences in B2B to not only help their own self, but also get amplification through that creator.
Agreed. All right. Story number 2. What's the second one for today, Nick?
All right. So we're going to dive into the NDR playbook, which is from our good friends over at ComSoar. Very interesting. And so, there was definitely some pieces within the playbook, some good, I wouldn't say some bad, but, some things that we could definitely talk about. And so I pulled out some kind of interesting quotes, but I think the first thing that I have that is interesting that I at least want to touch on is the playbook talks about focus on customer success. At least that was a takeaway from me. So improving your net dollar retention, it starts with prioritizing customer success, ensuring customers achieve their goals with the product, which ultimately we know drives renewals and upsells, because in today's world, I guess in any world, it's going to cost less to retain a customer than go out and acquire a new one. So, I'm curious on your thoughts on that one, Mark.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you want to start with the end in mind. The NDR playbook, which stands for Network Development Rep, a new term that ComSoar has coined. Do we really need a new term, ComSoar? It's all right. We'll let you have a pass, but fine. NDR. We invented one at Drift, CDR, so fine, and look, we're invented people first GTM, so yes, throw it right back at us, ComSoar. I digress. To your point, Nick, customer success and customer value is what you want to deliver. Like, if you don't deliver value to your customers, will you have a healthy business? Most likely not. Shit's eventually going to catch up with you. You're going to be in trouble because you got a leaky bucket and you're going to keep spending money on garbage going out, right? So when you think about how do you create quality customers that are the right fit, they're going to find and feel and see the value that you are promising. Going and finding those customers through people, through networks, right, is probably a good move versus trying to take more of a spray and pray, even if it's targeted outbound, spray and pray approach, or, letting inbound do its work, which does work, but it's not going to usually never be enough to help a company really, really grow. If it wants to grow past a certain revenue threshold, you're going to need to use another thing. And that thing today is go-to network, and people, I should say, that are helping enable go-to network are these network development reps. So yeah, what else did you find in the study, Nick?
One of the things, listen, I think the NDR role I understand it. I think it's innovative. It modernizes sales strategies, but transitioning, and this is kind of my second point put together, but there's implementation challenges. Transitioning to an NDR model requires significant changes, at least in my mind. And again, maybe this is because it's so new, just like back when ABM came out. It's like, think about the training, the enablement, the company culture around implementing something like this. It's tough because it straddles both sales, marketing, potentially leading to misalignment within the teams. It's like, where does this person, how does this person work with everyone else? And if they're not completely familiar with that, that can be really hard.
Well, I think to your point, with anything, you're going to have to enable and upskill and train your team, no doubt. 50% of the teams, have the BD or SDR function on sales, and the other 50% have it in marketing. So I don't fully buy that take. It's always kind of messy. The take I think you said around how do you actually make the change management happen is good, and that's why you should read this guide. If you read the NDR playbook and the guide that was put out, it walks you through a lot of the things you need to do. That being said, it's just a guide. It's not the ultimate resource. There's a lot more to be figured out. But you got to take a crawl, walk, run approach. My youngest is not even crawling, right? So if you're not even trying the NDR thing today or trying to activate your networks of people, so the people inside your company, the network of your customers, the network of maybe your best fans, your partners, if you're not trying to use people to find new customers, just start there. Just start asking every deal that is either going to close or get close lost, hey, so-and-so buyer, I'm just wondering, do you have anyone else that might be a good fit for what we've been discussing? Would you mind making an intro? The amount of people that don't do that is obscene. Just start there for examples, right? So it is definitely, to your point, Nick, a mindset shift. It's going to require education, enablement, skill sets. It's going to require a belief, though, at the same time. But that's with anything, right? Like, if you think about go-to-market these days, go-to-market is not a one-team sport. It's a multi-team sport, right? You know, you could say American football might be the best analogy of this because you have 3 teams, but there's more than that even in a business, right? There's 4 or 5 teams. So I like the idea of NDRs a lot. I think it comes down to implementation, and rubber meets the road when that happens. And Comstor is going to continue to have to educate and teach and show examples of how NDRs are actually behaving and executing and acting in the wild.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and that, I mean, you kind of touched on like my last piece, but I feel like it's interesting. I feel like it's a mix of like social selling plus evangelism plus creator to a certain degree. You know, at least in the playbook, it says there's really 2 goals. You have a meetings goal, obviously, which we know with SDRs, like that's what they're basically comped on. But then there's also network growth, which is where I think the like creator aspect comes in. And I could see creators being a really good fit for this. I think they would do really well because it's like you're engaging where your prospects spend time. So with LinkedIn events, if you're someone with an extrovert personality, going out there and just having those conversations and building your own network, which we know will only benefit you in the long run. I'm excited for it. I think, like you said, I think there's going to be a lot of education that needs to be done, but I want to see where they continue to build this. I want to see more companies start to adopt this because I'm 100% on board with this role and kind of like the mindset shift of it. I just want to see how it is from an execution standpoint.
Let's get to the third big story of the day right now. All right, everyone. It's time for the third story of the day. The special guest. We got a great one today, folks. Mr. Justin Keller. What is going on, Justin?
What's up, guys? I'm thrilled to be here. As soon as you texted me, Mark, I was like, I'm not even going to read this. The answer is yes. So I'm honored to be part of this.
Brave man, Nick, right? Brave man.
Very, very brave. But I mean, I love the like, you know, the honesty. It's, I mean, you know, who knows what you could even be in for, because Mark has been getting pretty spicy on these. So
yeah, and then when I listened to the preview and like, you know, taking the bullshit out of marketing, I'm like, yeah, that's my language. Like, that's all I want to do. So I'm here for it.
Justin, you've been doing demand gen for a long time. Still a very young man. You look like not a day over 30, Justin, but you've been doing it for 2 decades. We got some pointed questions to ask you today because, look, you, Nick, and I have all contributed to, maybe a crisis is overblown, but there's been some, as of recent, couple years now at least, some pretty crappy tactics and things happening to get a buyer's attention. So the conversation we want to have with you today, Justin, is around this idea of how to create and build the demand gen strategy. Not a program, but a whole strategy that matches to how people actually buy things today. Because you're a VP of marketing, you've been a marketing leader for a long time, you get a ton of solicitation, and a lot of that solicitation flat out is shitty and sucks.
It is absolutely. It is just what a bad rap we're getting to. Like, I get it when people are like, oh, marketers. Like, no, I empathize with that statement. Totally get it. Like, and we've gotten maligned because there is so much downward pressure on the marketers. Like, one good thing about marketers, I will say, a good and bad thing, right? I think these 2 things can be true here. We've gotten closer and closer to the revenue number, right? Like, as marketers have been able to get measured, we're more and more responsible for actual revenue. That's a good thing, in my opinion, right? And as a result, though, that downward pressure has caused so many toxic behaviors, right? People are looking for like the quick wins, like, you know, what's the slimy bullshit? I don't care what it is as long as it helps me hit my number. And I think it's forced marketers to play short game on short game on short game, rather than building out a longer-term demand gen program, which I will say out loud, if you have the privilege of, you know, building out a long-term demand gen program, bless you, because that is not a opportunity afforded to most of us, right? It's kind of like it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's good if you can play the long game. So few of us get to play the long game.
It's a good tip for people looking for a job, you know, kind of dig into that as it relates to how you interview that company. But let's go to the first question. So simply put, Justin, How do you make demand gen programs not suck?
Wow. Well, if we could answer, I mean, so many different ways. My opinion, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, like about playing the short game. If you are trying to do a cash grab, you're never really building momentum, right? You're just slowly picking away at something. And so being able to build a demand gen program that is more around a movement and that creates community and that has a spirit to it. And I think that's like the part, if you can underline me on this, like that's the thing that I think is missing from so many demand gen marketers. And I think this new generation, like I've been marketing for a long time, but not long enough where this was the story, where marketers were storytellers, right? And it was just about really amazing ad copy. And, everyone was reading Ogilvy and trying to be kind of like that Mad Men marketer. I've been doing it long enough where I have seen the demand gen marketer come of age and their job is basically working in spreadsheets and doing reports and trying to build audiences. And that's awesome. It's important. It's also like it somehow has become marketing. And I don't feel like those two things are quite the same. Like the craft and the act of marketing, I think are two different things at this point in time. And I think it's important for a marketer that really wants to make demand gen not suck to remember that your job is bigger than spreadsheets and reporting on how that campaign went and, trying to get alignment with your sales leaders. All things that are critically important, but you're missing like the last yard in kind of truly great marketing, which is figuring out how to tell a story.
Great demand gen programs and strategies put people at the center of those programs and strategies. The lead story today, Justin, was something from Google, and they looked at what makes great ads. You nailed it. They talked about storytelling and people.
I think I'm not going to be able to find this. There was a Meta or Facebook, I don't know which one at the time, ran a report across the billions of ads that they serve every day. The biggest determinant of what makes a high-performing ad is the creative. Not the targeting. It's not the, what was the call to action button? It was like, what did this image, the story make me do? What did it make me feel? And that's so important. Buyers don't buy with their heads like they like to think they do, but it is an emotional action.
True. Nick, what's next on the docket for Justin?
Yeah, so this one, and I'm curious on your take on this because I have some maybe misconceptions in my mind, but what's the most egregious mistake made by practitioners of trying to create and capture demand today?
Okay, I have been around long enough to kind of have seen this whole story play out, right? Back in the day, demand gen was like, your keyword strategy. Like, where do we think they're biting? Let's like drop our lines there. Right? They started to get a little more targeted. And then at some point it became ABM. And it was like, okay, we can find all the different points on the map where the fish are. Let's just make sure we only drop our lines there. And that helps. There's some efficiencies there. But what I think is missing is, and this goes back to storytelling, it's like, rather than trying to find the fish, why don't you try and corral all the fish into one place, right? And I think that the act of trying to just do a lot of either too broad, right? Just kind of like, this one size fits all message, or the opposite, where it's like just too hyper-focused on too many little things, depending on the size of the fish you're going after, is a bad thing. And I think it's bad because of how it shows up in the actual creative, like how it actually shows up into the world is bad because if you're speaking to everyone, you're not speaking to anyone, right? And if you're talking too narrowly, you're kind of missing the ability to tell a good story. And so I think it's kind of finding that middle ground. And I think that gets exacerbated because of what we're saying. Like a demand gen marketer spends too much time in spreadsheet, not enough time just kind of look their heads down and being creative. And that's an existential issue, I think, for marketers, because what that happens is they get lazy. They take the, product marketer says, hey, these are the cool things about our product. They're like, great, that's my ad. I'm going to spend all my time turning that into ads and figuring out why the hell it's not working, rather than trying to actually take facts and turning them into something that's a little more aspirational. Someone that's like, I don't know exactly what this is. You're never going to get that done in a single ad, but like, I want to learn more. Like I need to kind of like understand what's happening here. And that's what the most egregious thing is they're not bringing these things to life and giving it a soul.
I love that personally. And I kind of have a little bit of a follow-up question there, but do you think it's because, and especially in tech with, we obviously know how the economy is going. Do you think it's due to bandwidth or do you think it's due to laziness?
Yes, both. I think both are true. Yeah. And I think and I think a third reason too is that they've not been shown that, right? Like, I mean, I know very tenured demand gen people at this point who have come and grown their career wildly successfully without taking a beat and thinking about the craft of marketing. It's almost an ignorance option too on there.
Yeah, 5-minute abs. Nick loves using the 5-minute abs routine. You can't really do that though with demand gen, right? There's no 5-minute abs for demand gen. I mean, come on, and Nick, does the 5-minute abs?
LinkedIn would like you to believe that, right? Like, I mean, how many LinkedIn posts do we scroll by every day where they're just trying to line break. This is your 5-minute abs. Here's how to max out your first quarter sales.
That's exactly it. Fuck the 5-minute abs. 5-minute demand gen. That's what that shit is.
Yeah.
What is the most common misconception from executives about demand gen?
It's a good question. I do think that, I don't know. I don't want to speak on behalf of all
Please do.
executives.
Please do.
And certainly
No,
not my,
please
my
do.
current
You
executives.
represent every executive.
I think
you represent everyone, Justin.
Like I started out saying, marketing is increasingly more and more responsible for revenue. And as a result, is less and less able to do truly brilliant things, right? I have so many, mostly in the past, executives are like, Justin, like take some time, dream big, do something big. And you do. And they're like, okay, now bring it back. Like, okay, this is, too much budget. That's going to take too much time. This seems a little like this might piss off one or two, people in our buying group. We need to be able to please everyone. And I think it's just, executives speak both sides of their mouth, right? They want super fast results. They want results, period. But they also want what we all dream of, which is creating like a really magical marketing moment. And I think both those things can exist at the same time.
Compromise, Justin.
I think it's compromise. And I think it's like, cut the marketing team a little break. Like no marketer, I shouldn't say no marketer. Most marketers want to do right by the business, right? They want to see wildly successful things happen. And then we say, okay, great. Like, show me all the numbers, give me the data, run the report, tell me how that would have worked in Q2 2 years ago. And it's kind of like, at some point, analysis paralysis prevents great marketing.
I'll add to this though. One of the most common misconceptions I see is they think demand gen can just do it on their own. It's like, all right, demand gen, just figure it out. Like, no. Like, for it to work, it has to be integrated beyond marketing. So, hey, CEOs listening,
100%.
Get your
Yes.
head out of your ass and understand that you need a complete, united go-to-market between marketing, sales, product, finance is the checks and balances. Like, what the fuck?
100%. And do you know how hard it is, even for a CMO, to be like, okay, here's what we're doing. CFO, get stoked. CEO, here's what we're doing. I need you to tell the whole company. Getting that amount of buy-in at that level is nearly impossible. It has to come from the CEO. The CEO needs to be one that's like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going big. Like, if this is coming from me, everyone's boss. That's how you get that momentum started.
Breaking news. The CEO has an idea about marketing.
Well, and then on the flip side, I mean, I know there's lots of people out there. If the CEO doesn't get marketing, that's a huge red flag in its own.
Red flag,
Yeah.
run.
Giddy up and get out.
Which is tough. And I've worked for many CEOs that did not understand marketing. And it was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months on the job where you could just start to see the clock ticking down because it's just not going to work.
100%. All right, let's dive into this last question of this first segment here. So as you know, we're big believers of the people first. And so in your mind, what does a people first version of demand generation look like?
So for me, marketers get put into very specific roles. Every, quarter, half a year, you may have a brainstorm where everyone gets to bring their ideas to the table. Like, that's every marketer's favorite day. It's like, when you get to sit down and try and be really creative and think outside the box. And 90% of those ideas just go into like a good ideas box, and you swear to God, you're going to get to those later. I think empowering people to break out of that is what I think of, like being able to celebrate and hear the ideas from all over the marketing team, to take a bad idea, especially to take a bad idea and to turn it into a good one, is like one of my favorite things about being a marketing leader. Like, I can't think of, I would go so far as to say 75% of like the most successful things I did started as a dumb idea that someone said kind of like as a half joke. And then we're like, okay, but wait a minute. Like, it's kind of like one of those Columbo moments, like the record scratch. It's like, okay, that is obviously stupid, but what if? And you just start to kind of like polish it up. And then pretty soon you're like, okay, that's actually kind of a brilliant idea. Empowering the team to be able to contribute is really good. And then I think being able to do that in a way where it's not just absolute mayhem and, everyone all of a sudden, the email marketer, is crashing every meeting saying, hey, this is what I want to do, is to give frameworks, right? And so I think there's a few ways I've done this before around like the concept of like brand archetypes and like, personifying your brand and kind of like giving people guideposts so that they stay in their lane, but are also able to contribute and work autonomously.
I like that a lot. When I was at Alice, we did these things called inspo sessions, and it was myself, MK, there was Sarah Pion, there was a lot of people that were there. And so we would do a 1 hour meeting, and we really wouldn't hit our stride until about 45 minutes in, but we would basically just, everyone on the marketing team would get together. And whenever we had a big launch or something like that, we would basically throw some crazy ideas. And a lot of them, like you said, they were like wildly crazy or maybe dumb ideas that like once we like refined it together 45 minutes in, we were like, oh, wow, this is actually a really cool idea. We have everyone responsible for their own swim lane, but we know how it all integrates together and now how we can go to market. And I just thought it was so interesting. It was actually the first company that I ever did anything like that. Every launch that we had was absolutely fantastic, fascinating. Everyone knew what they're doing. Everyone was rowing the boat the same direction. And I think that was a huge piece of it, having those sessions and just kind of like having the frameworks and understanding everyone plays their own role in it, but everyone brought really creative ideas to the table. So
100%. Everyone's getting credit for an amazing thing. Like they may not be responsible for the sexiest part of it, but they had a hand in it, right? And all of a sudden, like they get to add that to, that's a new feather in their cap. I totally agree. That's something I'm doing with my team. First one's next week, 30-minute. At the end of the day on Tuesday, we're just having a 30-minute creative session where it's like, we're going to talk about marketing in academic strong word, think about marketing in like an abstracted sense. Like not what does this campaign need to do, but as marketers, what are we trying to get done here? Like, let's look at B2C. Like, let's figure out, like, let's swim where other people aren't. Let's do things that are decidedly different. Let's absolutely not pay attention to what the guys on LinkedIn are saying and trying to get us to hype up and ultimately buy their product. Secret.
Before we get to your exclusive frameworks that are for people checking this out on the TAC network, I'm going to make one point and answer this question as well. I believe it comes down to the culture of the marketing team and the culture of the company that is decided and evolved through both leadership and the people that are literally doing all the actual hard work. Because, leaders like Justin, you really don't do anything. Don't lie. I was an executive with you at Drift, at HubSpot. We don't do anything. We just show up. You put some makeup on. We smile. I got makeup on for this episode. It's fine. So it's the culture that matters. It's the culture. Justin, tremendous person, tremendous marketer, tremendous guest today. Thank you so much for the time. Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk, presented by the TAC Network. To hear our full conversation with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to the TAC Network. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.